Right then, let's go live to Sandringham. Thomas Godfrey is a news reporter for the Sun newspaper. Thomas, dramatic developments in the last 24 hours. We know, of course, that Andrew is back at Sandringham. What's the latest?
Good morning, Peter. Yes, the dust is still settling on one of the most dramatic days in the history of the royal family yesterday, as Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor was rushed away after a knock at the door from Thames Valley Police. This morning it is much quieter here on the Wood Farm estate, where Andrew is temporarily living before he moves to his new permanent home at Marsh Farm here in Norfolk. We've seen a few cars coming and going. An unmarked white van, potentially a delivery van, drove through the front gate here a short while ago. That's now left. A few staff out and about as well, and of course the presence of the police more generally. They're not searching this address. Those searches were concluded yesterday evening before Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor returned home from the police station. Obviously at Royal Lodge in Windsor this morning, police are back, continuing to look for any evidence that may aid what is now a full-blown criminal investigation.
This is really dramatic for the royal family. It's dramatic for the country as well. What happens now, Thomas? I mean, you've covered so many different crimes and investigations for the Sun, not involving a former prince, but given that he has been released under investigation, what does that actually mean? What happens next?
Well, let's be very clear. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor will not be given any special treatment by the police. They'll have a lot of time now, several weeks potentially, to work out with their partners at the Crown Prosecution Service whether they can lay any charges down or whether they need to investigate more. There is still the potential that Andrew is called in for a second interview, or that other police forces, who we know...
Oh, I think we've just lost the connection to Thomas there, but I think what he was about to say is about those other police forces that are looking into this. And we know that Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, has written to quite a number of police forces. I'll see if I can just see the list in front of me. I know that there are many police forces that have cover areas that are to do with airports, for example, and certainly, yes, here's the list. He has done he sent a letter, a 5-page memo. This is Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, to the Metropolitan Police, Surrey, Sussex, Thames Valley, Norfolk and Bedfordshire constabularies, which of course cover Heathrow, Gatwick, Luton, RAF Marham and RAF Horsham, among other airports and air bases. So there are so many different elements to this. I think we're back with Thomas. Thomas, I've just been outlining Gordon Brown there sending this 5-page memo. Gordon Brown saying the memorandum provides new and additional information to that which I've submitted to the Met, Essex and Thames Valley Police forces, where I expressed my concern that we secured justice for trafficked girls and women. Now, what Andrew was actually arrested for yesterday is not actually to do with the women, is it? It's to do with misconduct in public office, which by itself can be a very complex charge. He hasn't been charged yet, of course, but can be a very complex thing.
Yeah, we normally see misconduct in public office used for police officers who may be corrupt, or for prison officers, some very notable cases recently. It's quite a broad offence. It's a common law offence. There's no sort of statutory outline of what it actually is, but there are a few key components. Obviously, the police in this case, we know, before arresting Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, were liaising with specialist prosecutors in this field to establish if there was any basis on which he could be interviewed over this. This all relates, of course, to Andrew's decade as the UK's global trade envoy. He went around the world on behalf of the Foreign Office and the Business Department, liaising with foreign governments, trying to strike trade deals, trying to help promote Britain on the global stage. But there was criticism over his links to Epstein in that role, and the latest tranche of emails appears to show Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor forwarding on reports from some of those trips. Now, he hasn't responded to those allegations yet. He has denied other wrongdoing in his relationship with Epstein. But this is a really, really complex offence. It could take quite a while to actually work out on what grounds he could be charged, if he's going to be charged. And of course, searches are still ongoing, and the police may well be looking for more evidence, other emails even potentially, from his Buckingham Palace email account, which we know he was using because it's listed in the files, to see if this could have happened potentially, allegedly, multiple times.
Very interesting to talk to you. We'll check in with you perhaps a bit later on. There's Thomas Godfrey there, news reporter at the Sun, down at Sandringham, near to where Andrew is now. Davies is a former head of Royal Protection. Thank you for joining me this morning. There are questions not just about Andrew, but also about who saw what, when. I just wonder, from a Royal Protection perspective, he had, of course, and still does, have Metropolitan Police officers who look after him as part of the Royalty and Specialist Protection Unit. And Thames Valley Police as well, looking after him too. I just wonder, if an officer were to see something that they thought was a crime, what would they do about it, or what should they do about it?
Well, a very good morning, Peter.
Morning.
In respect of what a police officer do, should be exactly like anybody else. He should report it and or take action at the time. We've been talking about misconduct in office, and quite often that somewhat vague common law offence has often been used against police officers for failing or carrying out unlawful duties in their role as a public servant, prison officers. So there is no excuse if any police officer sees a crime being committed, he or she has to act. If they can't act immediately, then they should bring that to the attention of their managers and or leaders. And that's what should have happened in this case, should any police officer at any time in that period where, well, throughout his life until recently, they were with him. So questions, surely, common sense says they have to be interviewed.
The things that Andrew is being accused of are very, very serious. Of course, he denies all the allegations against him in regard to women. We know as well, women and girls, it should be said. But what he is being arrested for is misconduct in public office. I just wonder, if you're a Royal Protection officer and something reasonably minor happens, how much discretion do you have? I'm not saying anything Andrew did or didn't do was minor, but if you're looking after, let's say, for example, a royal princess who's 16 and someone hands her a glass of wine or invites her to the pub, what do you then do? That's illegal.
Well, yes, and there's precedent with that, with Harry and other juniors, and even Prince Charles, when he was in Gordonston, or King Charles as he won, that very issue that he went to a pub and they gave him a drink when he was underage. Common sense applies. And again, in today's, if somebody gave him a spiff or something like that, you would politely say, come on, you shouldn't do that. And arguably, I would say, you'd stamp on it or put it down the loo and give him a good bollocking. And in fairness, juvenile members of the royal family were given, because quite often in those days, the protection officer was much older, much wiser, and that's what would happen. But there is no excuse for any compliance or aiding and abetting any crime at all, and there is procedure to deal with it. And so questions must be asked, sadly, of all those years and all those officers who must...
So what's going to happen? I mean, we've talked about the minor stuff, we've talked about the major allegations. So will those police forces, perhaps Thames Valley Police, now be wanting to go through and talk to all of those royal and special protection officers who've looked after Andrew over the years? If they were in America with him and they turned a blind eye to things, surely those officers, as well as Andrew, would be subject to perhaps criminal investigation at some point.
Well, I think you're right. Whether it's Thames Valley or the Metropolitan Police themselves, who apparently are now investigating some aspects of what personal protection officers have known. And let's face it, we're going back. He's been protected all his life. Now, clearly, they would have to narrow that down to the periods in question and possibly before, slightly, and after. So there are so many questions, not only of police officers, but of those public servants that went with him, diplomats, staff, valets, butlers. I mean, the tentacles of this, I said earlier this morning, a Pandora's box. Well, that box is huge, and it needs coordination between now 10 forces, and somebody at the appropriate level will have to decide on a strategic plan and then action that plan into a variety of different actions. And that's going to be quite complex. And then, of course, throughout this, you will have specialist crime CPS lawyers advising, because so far it's misconduct in public office, which is enormously vague. And truth, no high-ranking official has ever in this country been prosecuted There are so many loopholes in it, and it worries me that they ought to be looking at other aspects of the investigation, not relying on misconduct, in my opinion.
Certainly misconduct in public office, as you say, is one of those charges that, if, and he hasn't been charged yet, but that is one of those things that, as you say, can be vague. So they really should, in your opinion, look for other ways to perhaps charge him, you think. And of course, there are so many questions saying, well, look, if he was trade envoy and he was sending things to people that he shouldn't have been sending, what about all the other evidence, and there is lots of evidence in the public domain about his role with Epstein, about his role with young women, the allegations against Virginia Giuffre? There's been no criminal sanction to do with that, for example. Could that, presumably, that is another avenue that prosecutors and the police should be looking at?
Well, most certainly. You're absolutely right. And that's why I say the tentacles of this, including the Official Secrets Act, if that applies to very sensitive military information, which he would have been party to over the years. You know, he was going around all around the world talking about British arms sales, all manner of things. So he would have been given the top level, possibly secret information. Well, did he release that? These are part of the investigation. So this is only the start of a complex investigation into him. And don't forget his ex-wife and others who may have aided and abetted him, including private secretaries. I'm not going to name anybody, but they are in the public domain.
Yeah, there are a number of names of people who may have forwarded things on. Certainly very, very interesting, and the tentacles will go everywhere. Di, appreciate your contribution this morning. It's Di Davies there, who's a former head of Royal Protection. Lots of